Being a successful monster. Sounds disturbing, doesn't it? But let's be honest. Every morning when you look in the mirror, you know that beneath that polite and compliant mask, there is a predator screaming to be unleashed against the world's ruthless cogs. Today at Daily Books, we're here to break the shackles of politeness. Through Dr. Kevin Dutton's mind-opening work, The ABCs of Psychopathy, we'll walk through the dark but equally functional corridors of success. In this noisy digital age of 2026, the price of being a good person is often invisibility. What if I told you that possessing a psychopath's coolness, focus, and fearlessness could transform you not into a criminal, but into a superhuman? I know, those cliched images immediately spring to mind. The murderers behind bars, the chilling killers in Hollywood films. But Dutton talks about another reality: functional psychopaths. They're among us. The surgeon who saves your life on the operating table, the CEO who determines the fate of thousands in a crisis, even SAS Commando Andy McNab, who survives the toughest missions. They all share a secret. They use emotions not as an obstacle, but as a dial. Throughout the history of philosophy, this state of emotionlessness has always been a subject of curiosity. The Stoics' apatheia, or indifference to the outside world, is actually quite similar to the modern psychopath's control panel, isn't it? As Marcus Aurelius said, the soul is unaffected by what happens to the body. Today, we combine this ancient wisdom with modern neuroscience. Are you the operator at the mixing desk, or just an instrument whose buttons are being pressed by others? Here at Daily Books, we don't just read stacks of paper, we take X-rays of the soul. Throughout this video, I want you to ask yourself this question: when was the last time you focused solely on the outcome when making a decision, rather than feeling guilty? If your answer is never, then perhaps you've lived your life up until now solely to make others' lives easier. This guide by Kevin Dutton and Andy McNab will teach you not to be selfish, but to be usefully ruthless. Fear. Fear is just an illusion, but for most of us, it's a prison. Psychopaths are either born with the keys to this prison, or they forge them later in life. In these first 5 minutes, I want you to leave your mask on the table, because in a moment, we will see how the void beneath that mask can actually be filled with immense power. I'm referring to the abyss Nietzsche spoke of in his work Beyond Good and Evil. If you stare into the abyss long enough, the abyss also begins to stare back at you. Today is the day we shake hands with that abyss. Do you think the modern world uses empathy as a weapon or as a weakness? When we combine thousands of analyses on the internet, Andy McNab's real war experiences, and Dutton's data from Oxford laboratories, the picture that emerges is this: if life is a chessboard, most of the pieces are sacrificed because they succumb to their emotions. If you want to be king, you must first learn to silence your emotions. If you're ready, we're embarking on the darkest yet most illuminating journey in Daily Books history. Our first stop: switching off empathy and maximizing focus. Don't fasten your seatbelts, because on this journey, we need reality, not safety.
You are Fatih. Now that we've put the mask aside, we step out from under the cold lights of the laboratory and descend into the dusty, unforgiving arena of the real world. Kevin Dutton gives us a list. This is not a shopping list. It is a modern gladiator survival kit. Dutton and McNab call it functional psychopathy, but let's call it emotional engineering. Imagine psychopathy as a spectrum. At one end are murderers who harm society. At the other are the world's most successful leaders, surgeons, and special forces soldiers. What's the difference?
The difference is how the famous control panel buttons are set. Dutton's research shows that successful psychopaths can turn these buttons on and off at will. So what are these 7 deadly gains? Our first stop, ruthlessness. But wait, when I say ruthlessness, I'm not talking about hurting someone. I'm talking about the necessary harshness Machiavelli mentions in The Prince. If your hand trembles at the moment of decision, you are actually serving your own weakness, not others. Is it ruthlessness or a necessity for a CEO to shut down an inefficient department to save the company? Philosophically speaking, this situation challenges Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative. The psychopath bases his actions not on universal moral laws, but on the efficiency of the outcome. Just as a surgeon thinks not of the patient's pain on the operating table, but the scalpel's millimetric precision. The second gain, charisma. But this is not the charisma of a cheap sales representative. It is that silent authority that changes the air pressure in a room when you enter it. Dutton says that psychopaths are not skilled at manipulating other people's emotions, but at reading them. They view social interactions like a chessboard. They process your weaknesses, desires, and fears as data sets. As Oscar Wilde said, people take themselves seriously, but in reality, each one is a mask. The psychopath sees the emptiness behind that mask and knows what to put there. This is not a lack of empathy, but the pinnacle of cognitive empathy. They feel, but they are not affected. Third, and perhaps most critical, focus. In the noisy world of 2026, the greatest luxury is being able to lock onto a single point. Think of Andy McNab's SAS operations, with bullets flying around you and screams rising from the radio. How do you lock your mind on the target like a laser beam? By shutting out emotional noise. The amygdala in a psychopath's brain does not transmit fear signals as intensely as it does in other people. This is a biological advantage. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, it is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about those events. The psychopath has no judgment, only analysis. Fourth gain, mental resilience. When life knocks you down, most people ask, why me? The psychopath asks, what should I do now? This is Nietzsche's maxim, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger, brought to life. For them, failure is not an end, but a software update. Remember the character Tyler Durden in David Fincher's film Fight Club. Only after you've lost everything are you free to do anything. This is the psychopath's mental freedom. They don't attach themselves, so they can't be broken. Fifth, fearlessness. Ranked fifth is actually hand in hand with the fourth, but this is not reckless courage. It is seeing risk as a calculated mathematical problem. When Dutton tested high-performance athletes and psychopaths in his Oxford laboratory, he came across a surprising result. In moments of danger, both groups entered a state of flow rather than freezing. Fear is not an obstacle for them, but fuel. That presentation that makes your knees tremble, that investment decision, or that difficult conversation. For the psychopath, it's just the next move. Sixth, awareness. But this is not meditation awareness. This is hunter awareness. It is instantly grasping every detail, every opportunity, and every threat around you. It is understanding in a second who is powerful, who is weak, and who is lying when you walk into a room. Sherlock Holmes' famous observational skills are actually the mental map of a functional psychopath. He sees the clues, we merely look. And finally, action orientation. Most of us suffer from analysis paralysis. We think, we plan, we procrastinate. But the successful psychopath just does. Like a shark, if it stops, it can't breathe. Action is their form of existence. In the history of philosophy, this is the harshest form of existentialism. As Jean-Paul Sartre said, man is the sum of his actions. If you don't do, you don't exist. The Daily Books community. When you hear these 7 points, I can hear a voice inside you saying, "But this is very selfish." That voice is the slave morality that society whispers to you. Let's make a philosophical critique. Michel Foucault, in The Birth of the Prison, describes how society disciplines and tames individuals. This system that forces you to be a good person actually wants to make you manageable. Dutton and McNab, however, offer you a key to escape this system. So what happens when you turn this key? Think of a surgeon. If they were emotional, their hand holding the scalpel would tremble. Think of a firefighter. If they were afraid, they couldn't enter those flames. Society needs these successful monsters. But the question is, do you need this monster? Are you ready to be the surgeon of your own life? For these 10 minutes, we planted a seed in your mind. The name of this seed is strategic cool-headedness. In the next section, we'll discuss how to use these weapons in the wild digital forest of 2026, how to stand out among algorithms and people. But first, be honest with yourself. Which of these 7 gains do you need the most? Think only for yourself without feeling guilty. As Nietzsche said, if you want to reach the heights, use your own legs. Don't let others carry you. Don't ride on others' backs and heads. But perhaps, sometimes, reaching that summit requires a spirit that doesn't care about others' opinions. Get ready. We are moving on to the darkest and most rewarding part of the journey, the application phase.
Now, we turn off the stage lights and return to the ruthless digital jungle of 2026, that chaotic ecosystem where you breathe every day, where algorithms process your soul like a data set. Kevin Dutton's laboratory data from Oxford and Andy McNab's experiences on the gunpowder-scented battlefields are no longer mere information. They are survival software you must utilize on your phone screen, in your business meetings, and in your most intimate relationships. Why? Because in 2026, algorithms dictate not only what you watch, but also what makes you angry and what makes you sad. Society is dumping a massive emotional overload on you to tame you and make you manageable. This is precisely where the most radical power of the functional psychopath comes into play: strategic emotional detachment. Pause for a moment and imagine when a lynch mob erupts on social media, when everyone at work is panicking and blaming each other, or when you are in the most critical crisis of your life and everyone else is a slave to their emotions, you remain ice cold and focused solely on the data and the solution. This is not becoming numb or turning into a robot. It is being the only unshakable harbor in the eye of the storm, while everything around you is collapsing. Philosophically speaking, this is the radical and frightening freedom Jean-Paul Sartre talks about in his work, Being and Nothingness. The gaze of others can no longer define you or imprison you, because you have gone far beyond those gazes, becoming both the player and the sole rule-maker of your own game. Dutton discusses the black and white thinking method with the precision of a surgeon in his work. The modern world suffocates us in gray areas, endless hesitations. What if I'm wrong? What will people say? For a functional psychopath, These are just unnecessary noises that tire the mental processor. The goal is clear, the move to be made is obvious. When you place this methodology at the center of your life, you will see that the paralyzing indecision, known as analysis paralysis, the greatest plague of 2026, is instantly cured. Remember that golden rule Andy McNab whispered to his soldiers during SAS training. Make a decision immediately, even if it's wrong, because indecision and inaction are the fastest forms of death. But what about ethical values? As the Daily Books community, we're not talking about a moral collapse here. On the contrary, Dutton's definition of the good psychopath doesn't throw morality completely out the window. It uses it as a strategic choice. Honesty, reliability, and loyalty. You choose these not because you are a good person, but because they are the most efficient and functional tools for long-term and sustainable success. This is a modern reference to Machiavelli's ancient advice in The Prince. You must know how to be dark when necessary, but always appear as the representative of light. But we are pointing to a deeper truth here. If you truly want to achieve great results, you must not kill that predatory beast within you. You must tame it and unleash it like a hunter on the right target. Let's take a look at the harshest reflection of this in popular culture, the character of Logan Roy in the series Succession. Logan Roy is not an object of affection. He's certainly not a monument to compassion. He is a figure of pure authority and power. He sees his emotions, his children, and everything around him as mere pawns to be used solely to protect and expand his empire. We are not telling you to be a Logan Roy. However, we remind you that without donning his emotional impermeability armor, you will not survive at this wild wolves table in 2026, and you will only end up as an appetizer at someone else's table. When was the last time your voice didn't tremble when you said no to someone? When was the last time you broke the shackles of that false politeness society expects of you in one fell swoop to seize an opportunity? Now ask yourself, in this digital jungle of 2026, will you be the prey or the silent, deep hunter who rewrites the rules of the forest? At Daily Books, we are on the side of the hunters. Now it's time to turn this cool-headedness into action as we move towards the grand finale.
We are nearing the end of the journey. But in truth, this is not an end for you. It is that great beginning where you break free from your fabricated shackles and awaken to your own truth. For 25 minutes, you have stayed with me here in this dark but lucid analysis by Daily Books. This does not simply mean you watched a YouTube video. It is proof that the sleeping giant in the depths of your mind, that successful psychopath, is now ready to awaken. The 2026 algorithm may reward what is fast, shallow, and temporary. But here, we are building what is lasting, the steel core of character. Let us engrave Friedrich Nietzsche's famous warning in our minds. He who fights with monsters must take care lest he become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. What we are doing here today is not dancing on the edge of that abyss. It is recognizing that abyss and learning to use its power to our advantage. Our monster is not a savage attacking innocent people outside. It is the meticulous precision of a surgeon dissecting our inner weaknesses, hesitations, and misplaced guilt. Are you ready to shake hands with that new version of yourself, free from guilt, using fear only as a signal and locking your focus onto a single point? Now, when you look in the mirror, don't just see that face tamed by society, tired and compliant. Feel the ice-cold composure, the sharp strategic intelligence, and the unshakable will lying just beneath that mask. Never forget that ancient lesson Andy McNab learned in SAS training. The sole rule for survival. The worse the situation gets, the calmer you must become. Tonight, whatever the greatest obstacle in your life may be, look at it through these newly acquired eyes. Silence the emotional storm, push the noise aside, and plan only the next right move, the most effective attack. Being part of the Daily Books community is not just about clicking a subscribe button. It's about tearing up the ordinariness scenario that the modern world imposes on you. We don't offer you the pink lies you want to hear. We give you the cold, hard truths you need. If this 25-minute journey has cracked open your mind, let the light seeping through that crack transform you. You know now, success is no accident. It is the reward for those who can wield their emotions like an instrument. As philosopher Martin Heidegger said, man is the sum of his possibilities. Your greatest possibility is to become the master of your own mind. Kevin Dutton and Andy McNab didn't just give you a map, they gave you the eyes to read that map and the unshakable legs to walk that path. Now, how you reflect that quiet, deep power in your life is entirely up to you. I'm Fatih. We've come to the end of this in-depth analysis session from Daily Books. Tonight, when you lay your head on your pillow, listen to that voice whispering to you from the darkness. That voice isn't telling you to fear. That voice is telling you to wake up and take control. Do not hesitate, because true freedom begins in that sacred moment when you stop caring what others think. Stay calm, stay focused, and always be the sole and absolute ruler of your own life. Farewell.